In the closing years of the First World War, German signals officers already understood that the next conflict would be fought not only with rifles, shells, and steel, but with words and numbers carried invisibly through the ether. Radio had emerged as a decisive tool, transmitting orders instantly across vast fronts, but it also introduced a fatal vulnerability. Anyone could listen. To protect their secrets, German engineers developed electromechanical encryption machines, culminating in the commercial Enigma model of the 1920s. Few outside small circles of mathematicians noticed its significance, but by 1933, as Hitler seized power, the German Navy and Army quietly adopted Enigma as their standard cipher device. By the outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939, it was regarded as impregnable, an industrial fortress of electrical circuits and mechanical rotors that, the Germans believed, no enemy could ever penetrate. The Enigma machine looked modest, resembling a portable typewriter encased in wood. Yet beneath its keys and lampboard, 3 or later 4 interchangeable rotors carried electrical wiring that scrambled each letter into another. With every keystroke, the rotors advanced, creating a constantly shifting substitution pattern. A plug board at the front introduced a second layer of complexity, doubling the permutations. The mathematics were staggering, with 3 rotors chosen from 5, each capable of 26 positions, and with 10 pairs of letters linked on the plug board, the daily key space amounted to roughly 150 quintillion possible settings. By the early 1940s, the naval Enigma, fitted with 8 rotors to select from, and later an additional thin beta wheel, expanded this to figures beyond 10 to the 23rd permutations. German cryptographers were confident that even if an enemy tried a million settings per second, it would take longer than the age of the universe to exhaust the possibilities. But machines are only as secure as the men who operate them. And the Germans, despite their discipline, made mistakes. Repeated messages, predictable introductions, procedural shortcuts. More important still, the Allies had inherited a foundation of work from an unlikely source, a small team of Polish mathematicians. In 1932, Marian Rejewski of the Polish Cipher Bureau applied group theory to reverse engineer the wiring of early Enigma rotors. With his colleagues Jerzy Rejewski and Henryk Zygalski, they built replicas of the machine and developed methods such as the Zygalski sheets and the Bombe kryptologiczna to break daily keys. When Poland's survival was threatened in the summer of 1939, the team handed their research to British and French intelligence. This gift would become the foundation of Allied codebreaking, though its true potential was not yet understood. As Britain stood alone after the fall of France in June 1940, survival depended on the Atlantic lifeline. Merchant convoys carried food, oil, and munitions across 3,000 miles of ocean. German U-boats, directed by encrypted radio signals from Admiral Karl Donitz's headquarters, sought to cut those arteries. Losses were staggering. In 1941 alone, 875 Allied ships, totaling over 4.3 million gross tons, were sunk. Churchill later admitted, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril. The Enigma-coded orders that guided wolf packs were the invisible blade. If Britain could not read them, the convoys would be slaughtered."
The British response gathered at Bletchley Park, a Victorian mansion in Buckinghamshire, converted into the government code and cipher school. In September 1939, it held just a few hundred staff. By 1945, over 9,000 worked in its huts and blocks. Mathematicians, linguists, and engineers worked side by side, organized into specialized huts for Army, Navy, and Air Force codes. Among them was a young Cambridge mathematician, Alan Turing. Possessing a mind attuned to both abstract logic and practical machinery, Turing envisioned a device to mechanize the search for Enigma keys. His Bombe, developed with engineer Gordon Welchman and built at the British Tabulating Machine Company in Letchworth, used banks of rotating drums to simulate Enigma's wiring. By testing assumptions about likely words, called cribs, the Bombe could eliminate vast swaths of impossible rotor positions, narrowing the search from astronomical numbers to manageable lists. Early bombs were impressive but limited. Each machine stood 7 feet wide, weighed a ton, and contained 12 miles of wiring. By late 1940, only 2 were running, yet the demand was far greater. Naval Enigma, with its more complex keying procedures, remained unbroken. Losses in the Atlantic mounted. But technical progress was relentless. By 1943, Britain and America together operated over 200 bombs, many installed in massive halls at the U.S. Navy's Station Hypo and later at Arlington Hall. Production statistics reflected this urgency. In one peak month, 30 bombs rolled out of American factories, each consuming 15,000 vacuum tubes annually for maintenance. By war's end, the combined bomb fleet had executed trillions of rotor test cycles, each clattering like an industrial loom weaving threads of invisible intelligence. Breaking Enigma was never a single dramatic moment, but a grinding campaign of intellect against procedure. Each day at midnight, German operators changed rotor order, ring settings, and plugboard wirings. Each day, Bletchley's Hut 8 for Naval Enigma and Hut 6 for Army and Air Force codes raced to discover the new key. Analysts searched for stereotyped phrases, weather reports beginning Wetter Vorhersage, U-boat messages ending with Heil Hitler, or routine administrative reports. When matched against intercepted ciphertext, these cribs gave the bombs their starting points. Once a candidate setting was found, it had to be confirmed on actual Enigma replicas. Then the day's traffic could be read. Sometimes the cycle took hours, sometimes weeks. Delays cost lives, successes saved them. The capture of codebooks at sea provided crucial leverage. In May 1941, during the hunt for the battleship Bismarck, sailors from HMS Bulldog boarded the crippled U-110 and seized its Enigma machine with current keys. Similar hauls followed. U-559 in October 1942 yielded naval codebooks after 3 sailors swam into the sinking hull to retrieve them, 2 perishing in the process. Such documents allowed Bletchley to bridge gaps until the bombs caught up. Each success reverberated across the war. In March 1943, intelligence derived from broken naval Enigma, codenamed Ultra, enabled the rerouting of convoys and the concentration of escorts. That month, Allied sinkings of U-boats exceeded Allied shipping losses for the first time. By May, Donitz lost 41 submarines in a single month, a catastrophic 25% of his Atlantic force. The Battle of the Atlantic had turned.
Statistics tell the scale of this hidden war. Between 1939 and 1945, Bletchley Park decrypted roughly 2.5 million Enigma messages. Its archives handled over 2,000 intercepts daily by 1943, with some huts processing 8,000 punch cards per shift. Training pipelines expanded. Wrens of the Women's Royal Naval Service spent 120 hours in intensive courses before being assigned to Bombe operations, their hands blistered from constant plugboard rewiring. Costs mounted too. The British Bombe program consumed over £6 million during the war, equivalent to hundreds of millions today, yet the strategic return was incalculable. Historians estimate that ultra-intelligence shortened the European conflict by at least 2 years, saving possibly 14 million lives. The human experience of codebreaking, though less dramatic than battlefield combat, carried its own strain. Inside the wooden huts, the air smelled of hot oil from spinning drums and ink from teleprinters. Operators endured 12-hour shifts, their ears filled with the relentless mechanical chatter of the Bombes. Mathematicians, deprived of sleep, scribbled probability chains across chalkboards. Yet the sense of urgency never slackened. We felt we were listening to the beating heart of the enemy, recalled cryptanalyst Mavis Beatty years later. Each solved key was like opening a door into their war room. German faith in Enigma remained unshaken. A captured directive from the Oberkommando der Marine in 1944 declared, "The Enigma machine is mathematically unbreakable. Any suspicion otherwise is enemy propaganda." Naval High Command, document 27/44, June 1944. Operators were punished for procedural mistakes, but the machine itself was never doubted. The irony was that it was not mathematics alone, but the combination of mathematics with industrial-scale machinery, human error, and relentless Allied resource mobilization that defeated Enigma.
The implications stretched far beyond the Atlantic. In North Africa, ultra-decrypts revealed Rommel's fuel shortages and convoy schedules, enabling Montgomery to strike at El Alamein with confidence. In the Mediterranean, knowledge of minefield charts saved countless Allied ships. During preparations for D-Day, decrypted German situation reports allowed planners to chart the precise dispositions of panzer divisions in France. On June 5, 1944, a decrypted weather message from a German station confirmed that the Luftwaffe expected storms to ground Allied aircraft, an error that gave Eisenhower the margin to launch Operation Overlord the next morning.
Primary accounts testified to the effect. On July 10, 1942, a decrypted message from Panzer Army Africa read, "Supplies are desperately short. Fuel for only 3 days of operations remains." Ultra Intercept HW1/189. This intelligence, passed to Montgomery, informed his decision to dig in and wait at El Alamein, confident that Rommel would exhaust himself. Later, Admiral Sir Andrew Cunningham wrote in his diary, December 1942, "The stream of intelligence from Bletchley is astonishing. It is as though we have an open window into the enemy's operations." And Winston Churchill, in a note to King George VI in July 1945, remarked, "It was thanks to Ultra that we won the war." No exaggeration. Yet the secrecy was absolute. Few outside a narrow circle of commanders ever knew the source of the intelligence. To preserve the secret, painful choices were made. Convoys were sometimes left unprotected to avoid revealing to the Germans that their codes were compromised. Bombing raids were targeted with apparent randomness to obscure their true origin and decrypts. The moral weight of such decisions fell on men like Stuart Menzies, head of MI6, who balanced lives lost today against the larger arc of the war. By 1945, as Allied armies crossed the Rhine, Bletchley Park reached its peak. Over 200 million characters of enemy traffic were processed in its final year. The huts sprawled across the estate like an improvised factory, each staffed around the clock. Yet with victory came silence. The Enigma story remained classified for decades, its veterans sworn to secrecy. Only in the 1970s did the full scale of the achievement emerge, astonishing a public that had long attributed victory solely to battlefield heroics. Looking back, the German reliance on Enigma reveals both the power and peril of technology in war. The machine was brilliant, its permutations immense, its engineering elegant. But the Germans made the fatal error of equating mathematical possibility with practical security. They underestimated the industrial scale of Allied determination, the willingness to build hundreds of Bombes, to train thousands of operators, to pour millions of pounds into an invisible battle of logic. They underestimated the persistence of mathematicians who refused to accept impossibility. The sensory memory of that struggle lingers. Picture a night in 1943 inside Hut Lint, rain against the windows, teleprinter chattering as fresh intercepts arrive, the oily clatter of the Bombe in the next hall. A young wren wipes grease from her fingers, resets clugs, starts another cycle. A red lamp flashes. Possible stop. Analysts crowd around, feeding the candidate setting into a replica Enigma. A lamp lights. The German message decrypts into plain German. On the page appears an order from U-boat command, revealing positions and rendezvous. Within hours, Royal Navy escorts are steaming to intercept. Depth charges ready. The life of a convoy, perhaps thousands of men and tens of thousands of tons of supplies, has been preserved because of that moment.
By the time Germany capitulated in May 1945, more than 750 U-boats had been sunk, and the Allies had maintained the flow of 181 million tons of shipping across the Atlantic. Ultra's contribution cannot be measured in a single statistic, but it is etched into every ton delivered, every division supplied, every battle won with foreknowledge. The Germans never expected their code to be broken. They trusted too much in steel rotors and electrical circuits. Yet war is not won by machines alone. It is won by the fusion of intellect, industry, and sacrifice. The breaking of Enigma was not a triumph of luck, but of relentless logic, of factories turned into engines of thought, of thousands of minds synchronized like gears in a great machine. In the end, the very qualities the Germans prized, order, precision, mechanical efficiency, were harnessed against them. Their fortress of numbers was dismantled not with artillery, but with mathematics and machinery. The war of signals determined the war of steel.
And in that war, the Allies achieved the impossible, turning the secrecy of Enigma into the silence of U-boats, the starvation of panzer divisions, and the opening of beaches in Normandy. It was the victory of insight over arrogance, of human perseverance over blind faith in machines. The Germans never expected the Enigma code to be broken, yet it was. And in that breaking, the course of the Second World War was irreversibly changed.